Hello, and welcome to Ruben Uncut. Today, I have to bring up something very alarming and serious going on in our society today. But first, I'll have to give them a little bit of an introduction. You may have heard of a organization called the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is a right-wing think tank. You know, people whose goals are to manipulate public perception and influence policy via propaganda and bullshit. Well, today we're going to be looking at something of theirs because this is something that I heard a little bit about. I haven't watched this video. I've seen a couple clips from it. I heard some other people talk about it, but I need to see it. And you can watch it with me because I don't care if we're stealing clicks from fucking Heritage Foundation. Jesus. They're terrible. They're bad people. They also send a significant amount of money to NPR. And their spokespeople are frequently the conservative representation on NPR. Just something to think about. But the Heritage Foundation recently had a conference, and they have come up with something called Project 2025, which is what they would like the policy of the next Republican president to be. Now we're going to get to find out what that means. I'm honestly not sure who this gentleman is, but hopefully the video will tell us.
25. It is
Paul Dans, Director 2025 Presidential Transition Project, the Heritage Foundation. So they've put their name on this. They're proud of this. This is something they're not alarmed by themselves. But from what I've heard, it's going to be alarming.
Everyone here, this is the movement. We are going to be prepared day one, January 20, 2025, to hit the ground running as conservatives to really help the next president. Heritage got on the marker as an organization, but
you would think he would. It sounds like he needs Toastmasters.
Delivering the first mandate for leadership in 1980 to President-elect Reagan. We also, over time, gave a lot of resumes in, but when Dr. Roberts came aboard, he said, this task in 2024 is too big for any one think tank. This has to be a movement. And what we've done is use our convening power here at Heritage to bring the entire movement together. So 2025 is not a Heritage thing, it's a conservative movement thing.
So they're bringing all the big right-wing think tanks together. That's alarming on its own. Unified propaganda, so to speak. It actually sounds like something that would happen that liberals would do in an Ayn Rand book, to be completely honest.
Explain briefly here, we're going to have a panel and we'll have a video, but what we're doing is systematically preparing to march into office and bring a new army of aligned, trained, and essentially weaponized conservatives ready to do battle against the deep state.
Okay, so already this is kind of wacky and alarming. All the language he's using is language of essentially revolution, violence, insurrection. He's calling essentially what will be politicians soldiers. He is talking like they are here to save America.
If you would, join me in watching the video and inviting our fellow panelists here, Ed, Rick, and Ken Cuccinelli over, so we'll cue the video.
How is this guy leading a leadership conference? I mean, like, I don't mean to dog on him, because like I know plenty of people who aren't comfortable making, you know, like public speeches, and there's nothing wrong with you if that's how you are. But like you would think at a leadership summit, you would choose someone who had more charisma than a wet towel.
Video and have a little discussion.
What is Project 2025? It's a call for you to come work here, Washington.
He's in the video too. He must be ahead of this project because no one in a real leadership position would have chosen him to be the face I've worked in theater, and let me tell you, son, you don't have it.
D.C.
Conservatives face a tough challenge in Washington.
Okay, I'm going to assume the Leadership Institute is another think tank. These are probably, we're probably going to see people from the heads of these different think tanks. Wait, is that the guy? Is that Dan guy the head of a think tank? Nah, this got to be. I mean, I guess someone. He's white enough to fail upwards, I guess.
Washington, the swamp. The left has built a system that blocks and sabotages our efforts to run our government and deliver a conservative agenda.
People would come into
That's what you just described is the political process. The point is that it's not supposed to be just a political or just a liberal agenda. You're supposed to come together and try and find a compromise that'll help the American people.
to the government on behalf.
Russ Vought. Oh, hey, it's the bad guys from The Boys. Center for Renewing America. I wasn't aware our subscription was up.
Behalf of a president and not be bought into the agenda that he was elected to do. They were either uncommitted.
You mean like how Republicans did to Obama? I mean, like, just to point this out, like, Republicans tried to stay in the way of every single thing Obama ever did. And now they're like, let's see what happens. Now they're accusing the Democrats of doing the same thing. Also, they have this intern asleep at his desk. Wait, well, I'm going to back up because I want to hear what they're saying about this guy who's asleep.
And not be bought into the agenda that he was elected to do. They were either uncommitted or incompetent.
Things aren't going to change unless you
We did not gain total control because the interns were taking naps. That's got to be the answer.
commit to serving our country.
We want to make sure that the plans that are in place have been vetted so that the person knows not only what argument and excuses come in their way, but what the answer is, and have the trust of a movement-wide effort led by the Heritage Foundation to make sure that they know that it's credible.
This is a lot of think tanks. This is like way more think tanks than I had thought. They are trying to pool their money. That's what's going on. This is scary shit.
And it's conservative.
This time, we have a secret weapon. This time, we have Project 2025. By learning from the experience of former conservative appointees, we can overcome common obstacles and get things done.
The reason I got involved is because I wanted to be part of a movement-led effort, and Heritage Foundation has used their influence to be able to convene the movement.
We can be ready to hit the ground running on day one of the next administration. In the wise words of Morton Blackwell, you owe it to your philosophy to study how to win. Project 2025 will ensure a conservative agenda is ready to roll on day number one.
Make sure that we, as conservatives, are prepared to hit the ground running January 20th, 2025. To learn more, go to project2025.org.
Great. Well, let me
That was just an ad.
Great. Well, let me explain briefly how we've structured
The Honorable Rick Dearborn, visiting fellow, 2025 Presidential Transition Project, the Heritage Foundation. Paul Dans, the sad gentleman we've been watching so far. Director, 2025 Presidential Transition Project, the Heritage Foundation. How uncharismatic is this dude over here? That how uncharismatic are the rest of these people that Paul Dans, a name that sounds like he writes comic books and not good ones. Ed Corrigan, President and CEO, Conservative Partnership Institute. The Honorable Ken Cuccinelli, Senior Fellow for Immigration and Homeland Security. I'm assuming by the way, I'm assuming that abbreviation is for the Honorable. Senior Fellow for Immigration and Homeland Security, the Center for Renewing America. Ooh. You're against the deep state, but that guy is connected to Homeland Security. Interesting.
project. Thank you. Let me give you a little overview how we've structured this, and I'm going to pass the mic over to Rick Dearborn to give you a little bit overview from his view.
It's Comic-Cons for people who hate poor people. That's not fair. Not all rich people hate poor people, and not all conservatives hate poor people. They just don't act like they exist.
Point as Deputy Chief of Staff in the White House and running the last transition. We have 4 pillars we speak of, and this is an integrated approach. First, as you know, today we came out with our policy book, Mandate for Leadership. This sets the table for what conservatives want in their next standard bearer. We are bringing this out before the primaries to bring the candidates to our point of view. And we're standing at the ready to train them up and give them policy expertise. But this is a great sampling across our 50-plus member coalition of what conservatives in the main want to see in the next 4 years. 2, we're making a massive database conjoining all of our personnel recommendations into essentially a conservative LinkedIn. This is for
Just tell me what the fucking policies are, man.
anyone in America to enter into government here in Washington. This place is only going to change when we take people in from outside of the Beltway. Anyone who's listening to this, who's ever aspired to come serve, this is your call to do it now. Join the database, create your profile, and then 2, we shift into pillar 3. It's our online training. It's going to
Wait, are they creating a social media app to like find randos to run for office? That's kind of wild. If I understood it correctly, I don't know how good of a communicator this guy is.
teach you the rules of the road. How do you function in government? How does government function? We're going to teach you the more mundane things about how to get a security clearance, but we're going to tell you how to work effectively with a career staff.
I am very uncomfortable with the fact that that is actually a priority. Wouldn't that just come with the new responsibilities that they would get? When you say it like that, it makes it sound like you're infiltrating the government.
How do the budget processing work, the budget process works, and all these other intricacies of federal government life that you can't learn on the job. And then finally, we're going to be doing the
That you can't learn on the job. I'm not a politician, so I can't speak to like how unreasonable that statement is.
playbook. This is our plan of action for the first 180 days. We're doing transition teams. Rick, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience on the last transition and how this project will make it different?
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate that. So, Rick Dearborn,
All right, now we're handing it off to Mr. Potato Head.
I'm the former Deputy Chief of Staff for President Trump in the White House. But before
Holy
that,
shit.
and right after,
Rick Dearborn, visiting fellow, Presidential Transition Project. He was on the Trump campaign. So we know this guy is scary.
he won election in 2016, 3 days later, I was tapped to be the executive director of a presidential transition. I think James Baker is the only person that's been on a transition 5 times. I think he ran one 3 times. Normally, when you do it, it's your first time doing it. I love doing it. I don't know that I want to do it again, but the peaceful transition of power is an awesome responsibility. I would have given my right arm to have had the book that I see on so many tables out there, to have this Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise. I would have been able to go to our agency action team and put the book down and say, hey, here's what you should.
Oh my God, just get to something real and stop jerking yourselves off.
Should take a look at when you're going to build out how to run EPA or the Department of Justice or DOD. The 4th pillar that you talked about, Paul, the idea that there's a battle plan, plans, executive orders. How do you write?
I don't like that you're using the language battle plans. Like, we're not at a time in our country where I'm comfortable with that, even if it's a metaphor.
Those? What rules are important? What should you focus on? What can you anticipate that Congress may want to reverse or advance? What should your priorities be for the administration? You know, all of that will be part of this project that we provide the next conservative president. So I'm ecstatic about it. I wish I'd had at least this first piece, the book. And I'm happy actually to turn it over to a Deputy Secretary at Homeland Security and former Virginia Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli to tell you a little bit more about what is in this book and how important
Oh, that's how I knew the name Ken Cuccinelli. He's that guy. Okay.
it is.
Well, thank you, Rick. And I did serve in the Department of Homeland Security, and that's the chapter that the title in the book is lead author, but the reality is, in DHS, and you'll hear this from other chapter leads as well, over 30 people contributed to writing this chapter. It covers the entire waterfront of the department, which is 250,000 employees, over a $50 billion budget. There's a lot of ground covered under the banner of the Department of Homeland Security. And so some of the names you'll know: Mark Morgan, Tom Homan, Joe Edlow, who followed me in USCIS. Some of the others you wouldn't recognize, some from the legislative perspective, because some of what we look to do here is lead the way and have urge a president to lead the way in changing the law, not just issuing executive orders, but permanent changes to how American government works to better serve the American national interest and the American people. And all of those inputs are incorporated. We don't agree on everything all the time. You may have noticed that here or there in the conservative movement, but we reflect alternative options, and DHS is a good example of this. We start out with a primary recommendation, which may surprise some of you, and that is to get rid of the Department of Homeland Security. Well, maybe it doesn't surprise that many of you. But we also play the probabilities. Before I went to the dark side and went to law school, I was an engineer. I try to stay in touch with the numbers. And we think the odds of that, I don't want to bet on them, but we also worked, well, what if it doesn't get broken down? And by that, we don't mean get rid of the missions. We mean better manage from a national standpoint how American security is protected, how American responsiveness is protected. You think of FEMA.
It feels like you're not saying the thing. It feels like you're not saying what you mean out loud. You just say what you mean by this. It's very vague so far. Yeah, I want to get rid of Homeland Security. And by that, I mean, I want to manage it better, and we're not going to get rid of the missions. Those missions still need to be done. Like, what are you actually suggesting?
For instance, and we go through them agency by agency as well, including some of the things we think we should be rid of, like the TSA. It isn't that there shouldn't be security, but government doesn't need to run that, just by way of example. And that's not new.
I don't know how I feel about that one. Also, but I don't know if the TSA actually does anything. But then again, we haven't had any planes blow up. So, you know.
New to the conservative movement, but I think it is new.
I mean, from terrorists, to be clear.
New to a lot of America. And we lay out the groundwork for how an incoming team, as you heard Rick describe, could begin executing on.
So right now he's talking about essentially disassembling American security bureaucracies, probably to suggest replacing them with privatization. Now, that does seem to be that seems to be pretty clearly what he's saying about the TSA. I don't know if he means that for Homeland Security too. He hasn't said that.
On that goal on day one. And so,
but I do think that would be bad. The TSA might not matter if they do it to them, but if they start doing it to more of the government bureaucracies, some of that's going to be a problem. And it will not be, corporations are not always more efficient. They are especially not more efficient if they, if it makes more money for them to be less efficient.
So, like many of the other chapters, lots of people involved in writing the Department of Homeland Security chapter. Very proud of that work product. And I think that when you add in the personnel piece and the training, you're going to hear about more from Ed, pillars 2 and 3. This really would tee up an incoming administration to achieve more than we've ever seen under a conservative president.
I wonder if I could get away with putting Carmina Burana in this video. I'm sorry, Oh Fortuna. That song. I wonder if I could get away with putting that in here.
Before, which is exactly what we want to tee up the next conservative president to do. So with that, I'll hand it over to Ed Corrigan. I guess I should have mentioned I'm at Center for Renewing America these days, which is set up by Russ Vought, who you saw in this video here. He's former OMB. Obviously, I was at DHS. And that's kind of where I hang my think tank hat. And I can attest to use Ed's word from earlier today, the ecumenical nature across the conservative movement of this whole effort. And that only makes it stronger. It really does. It's a very powerful way
to hand it off to the other guy.
To see a bunch of individualists and organizations that value individual liberty set aside their own interests to work.
If you value individual liberty, why won't you leave the trans and gay people alone?
Just purely on behalf of good conservative policy has produced a really outstanding product. And I'll hand it over to Ed Corrigan.
So I'm Ed Corrigan. I'm the president of the Conservative Partnership Institute. Really proud to be a part of this project. So many of you are focused rightly every 2 years on electing.
Conservative Partnership Institute, President and CEO, Ed Corrigan. He looks like if you took a stereotypical like drill sergeant and then dehydrated him and sucked out all his muscle.
The right people, and so much of your time and energy and resources are put toward that effort. But so often we ignore what happens the day after you win. And that's what this project is all about, because that's so, particularly with the presidency, it's so important. And basically you're going to get a chance to flip through the policy recommendations, having all of that. Rick and I were up in Trump Tower.
What are the fucking policy recommendations?
In the winter of 2016, I was working on the personnel project. Rick was running the whole operation. It's just so important. Getting the right people, and that's what that we've been focused on, is the personnel database.
Am I wasting my time with just an intro? I need to know what some of them are. Are you going to say any of them?
Be robust. It's going to provide strong recommendations, and in addition, we're going to have elaborate training programs for folks who want to come in and want to serve. And
so far, the most alarming thing is how organized they are getting politically. This so far I haven't seen anything truly like questionable, but like it is a scary amount of power they're trying to consolidate.
And giving them the recommendations, the toolkit, and how to navigate it, and from people who have done it before and have been successful at it. So I just want to say, as Ken, you're going to hear a lot of folks say, it would be for the most powerful think tank in America, it would be very easy to go it alone on a project like this. That's not what happened here. Under the leadership of Kevin Roberts and Paul Dans and Spencer and Steve Groves and others, this has been really a team effort. You got 50 different conservative organizations have contributed to this. That's what.
Yes, and thank you, Ed, for that remark. I would say, this has never happened in our movement. We've never had this coming together of the entire state. The Bureau, we're hoping that we're going to get the word of Project 2025.
Dear Heritage Foundation, fuck you. You got to make it clear what you're. Gotta make it clear what you're trying to do. I will say almost all, like a large portion of the
they're going to come from all 50 states.
It's a book. It's a fucking book. It's a whole goddamn book. Are you gonna? Oh, fucking wait, can I? Okay, let's see here. Section 1. Oh my God. Oh no. It's a fucking book. And they're probably not going to have an official like bullet points version on their website because they want you to buy the fucking book. Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise. All right, let's see what we got here. Oh, this is the book. How? Wait, is this the whole fucking book? Yes, it is the whole fucking book. It is 920 pages. Oh my God. Oh my, I can't. I am not going to be able to read this to you. I'm sorry. It's too much. It's too much. Overview. The Heritage Found. All right, this is from medium.com, an independent analysis of the 2025 election. I'll be honest, I don't know much about this. Does this conservative action plan actually make any sense? Overview. The Heritage Foundation's mandate for leadership projects began in 1979 as an effort to provide conservative policy playbook for reducing government scope if the Republicans gained power. Subtitled The Conservative Promise. Okay, key policy priorities: limit government power and bureaucracy by eliminating agencies, regulations, and social programs. All right, so that's standard fucked up conservative shit right there. These actions would do irreparable damage to our society. You can't just willy-nilly get rid of regulations. And look, I would not be opposed to taking a look at our bureaucracies and seeing how we could make it more efficient. I'm not opposed to that. But this seems slanted. Like, this seems like the specific purpose here is to make sure that none of these bureaucracies can interfere with executive unitary power, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. Promote traditional Judeo-Christian social values, restrict abortion, and LGBTQ rights. So that's none of that sounds good to me. Deregulate industries for spur-free market economic growth. Reorient U.S. foreign policy towards unilateralism and national self-interest over global cooperation. Do you understand that that would put us at a significant market disadvantage when it came to capitalism? Increase military spending and projection of U.S. power abroad. Adopt more aggressive posture. Well, that's certainly not anti-war. Critique of recent administrations. Argues previous administrations expanded the government to reach into areas like healthcare and environment, violating limited government principles. Contends regulatory overreach has constrained economic growth and infringed on individual liberties. Says America has compromised, blah, blah, blah. Analysis through a nonpartisan lens. Well, the document articulates coherent conservative arguments and proposals, and nonpartisan analysis suggests sweeping unilateral reforms proposed could risk significant unintended consequences versus more incremental bipartisan changes. Lacks substantive engagement with progressive policy rationales, presents perspective as self-evident rather than needing evidentiary support, meaning that it's stupid. Overstates threats and policy failures of recent administrations based on partisan biases, insufficiently acknowledges context and policy complexities, assumes conservative policies are inherently correct while dismissing potential merits of alternative approaches across multiple domains, prioritizes limited set of interests and ideological goals while failing to sufficiently consider need for balancing competing priorities, rights, and ethical trade-offs. So basically, they just want to muscle everything through. Proposed consolidation. Here we go. Proposed consolidation of power in the executive branch risks abuse of authority, erosion of checks and balances, and undermining of civil service professionalism. And there you have it. Okay, so let's talk about fascism real quick, okay? So we throw away around the world the word fascism a lot these days. We should slow down and take a look at it and realize, because a lot of people are getting confused as to what it means. What does it mean to be fascist? And the answer is not just authoritarian. Any system can be authoritarian. Authoritarian just refers to how the system enforces whatever the system enforces. Fascism, now I'm not going to give you the whole Umberto Eco's 14 points, because honestly, I think it gives fascism a little bit too much credibility, because it can be broken down much simpler. Okay, fascism is this: unitary executive and unquestionable unitary executive power. An unquestionable unitary executive power. That is the root of fascism. The idea that we can put one strong man at the top and he will rule us all, and without question, is the basic fundamental principle of fascism. And anytime you hear someone talk about proposed consolidations of powers in the executive branch, that is they are risking fascism. Either they want fascism, or they can't seem to understand how this terrible choice would lead to fascism. And that's me being very charitable. It sounds like they want fascism if they are proposing a consolidation of power in the executive branch, because that's what that is. Analysis of key department-specific proposals. Defense Department, increase military budget and modernize all branches of armed forces. So increase the deficit. Refocus on great power competition with Russia and China as primary threats. That's like literally gearing up for war. Remove woke diversity, equity, and inclusion policies and restore traditional culture across military. We don't have enough soldiers, buddy. You should really let the LGBTQ people into the military if that's what this means. Have allies bear more costs and responsibilities for their own defense. So essentially, we hold no loyalty to our allies. Risks politicizing the military, alienating needed talent pools, and overextended resources abroad. Yep. Department of Homeland Security, restructure or break up DHS agencies like FEMA, TSA, and Border Patrol. I didn't see that one coming. What would they privatize Border Patrol? Prioritize immigration enforcement over humanitarian concerns. That's just evil. Eliminate cybersecurity and intelligence function. Wait, what? Eliminate cybersecurity and intelligence? Do you understand what cybersecurity is for? You just want to leave the world and leave America open to hackers? What the fuck are you talking about? Raises issues of loss of coordination, unchecked immigration actions, and U.S. vulnerability to cyber threats, obviously. Department of State asserts U.S. interests unilaterally over compromising in global institutions. Confront China, Russia, Iran more forcefully with sanctions and military deterrence. They're literally talking about running the world via military strength. Jesus. Link foreign aid tightly only to short-term American interests. So basically, fuck everybody else. If you're not doing something for me, I'm not doing anything for you. Undermines U.S. global leadership and cooperation, inflames tensions with adversaries, and compromises America's image abroad. We're going to look like warmongering dicks, guys. Department of Justice, review and terminate FBI investigations deemed contrary to partisan interest. There you go. There you go. In the investigations into them. Prosecute leaks aggressively. Now, America already kind of aggressively prosecutes leaks That's why Snowden ran to Russia. Also, like this, like we're talking about prosecuting whistleblowers, essentially. Eliminate or constrain internal oversight bodies? Hey, who watches the Watchmen? Well, if we get all this done, nobody be watching us. Politicize impartial law enforcement, obstruct legitimate oversight, and increase potential for abuse of power. Department of Health and Human Services, appoint a pro-life leadership to restrict access to abortion and contraception. Sorry. Oh my God. Yep. We're gonna have so many pregnant teenagers. Reverse protections for transgender patients. I'm sure that'll really, really help them out, guys. You evil, evil fucks. Transfer food stamps and Medicaid administrations to the states, guaranteeing that they will always be underfunded. Or just have to blame the high taxes on the state then. And all right, infringes on reproductive rights, gut safety net programs for most vulnerable populations, and strips healthcare protections. Department of Education, abolish the Department of Education and devolve all functions to the states. That is, we are gonna have that would give us the most dysfunctional future. Like we'd literally just have people walking across states talking to people, and they'll be like, wait, what'd you learn in school? Well, I learned this in school. Wait, no way. That's not true. No, it is. And we would just see a ton of that everywhere and would cause more division. This is a terrible idea. Expand school voucher programs and religious school funding. So, of course, privatize education because you know that works. No, it doesn't. It just provides education to the rich. Eliminate student loan forgiveness programs. We don't even have any. Fuck you. Risks gutting protections for disadvantaged students, reducing educational opportunities, and increasing inequality. It will definitely do that. Environmental Protection Agency empowers states to set environmental standards over federal EPA. No. Well, I mean, at least we'll all know which states we shouldn't live in. Focus only on core statutory missions, not climate or environmental justice. I don't know what they mean by core statutory missions, to be honest, but open scientific advisory boards to industry representatives. Y'all bitches spent all this time complaining about how corrupt the pharmaceutical industries are, and now you're basically saying, what if we let them run the scientific advisory board? Jesus. Threatens national standards for clean air, water, open doors for undisclosed corporate influence over public safeguards. Yep, that sounds about right. Assessment of policy proposals. While the document sets some reasonable goals like streamlining bureaucracy and outdated regulations, the solutions proposed frequently go to ideological extremes, sweeping unilateral actions that risk undermining civil service expertise, institutional power, and oversight mechanisms meant to prevent abuse of power. Over-politicization of agencies essential to impartial governance, purging dissenting voices, severe funding cuts or wholesale eliminations of programs, while flawed, serve important purposes for disadvantaged groups. Insufficient evidence provided for the assumed superiority and rationality of conservative policies proposed in areas ranging from environment to education. Failure to substantively engage with progressive policy or rationales or acknowledge legitimacy of alternative expert opinions. Lack of prudence and restraint, insufficient consideration of risks, unintended consequences, costs, and harms to minorities. Policy impact conclusions. If fully implemented, the agenda proposed in Mandate for Leadership would fundamentally damage America's system of checks and balances, consolidated power in the executive, fascism, lead to under-enforcement of environmental, financial, and other protections important to public well-being. Stupid. Increase healthcare inequalities, educational disparities, and discrimination against women, minorities, and LGBTQ individuals. Downright heinous. Severely reduce access to food, housing, and other critical services for low-income families. Eugenics. Escalate global conflict and undermine America's global leadership and competitiveness. That's true. Like these proposals, if this is all accurate, they don't that would fuck us in the market like hard. Politicize institutions essential to democracy like the law enforcement, intelligence agencies, and civil service. Overall assessment. The document articulates a clear, sweeping conservative policy agenda and critique of perceived liberal policy failures. It provides a coherent intellectual framework for a conservative ideological perspective. However, a rigorous, nonpartisan analysis reveals numerous flaws. Insufficient evidence provided for many assumptions and policy assertions made. Failure to grapple with legitimate counter-arguments, policy complexities, and unintended consequences. Willingness to impose massive changes with little restraint or prudence. Lack of concern for minority rights, impacts on vulnerable populations, and ethical implications of policies proposed. Fundamental disregard for core principles of pluralistic governance like compromise, checks and balances, and pluralism. Policy prescriptions. Constructive critiques of government performance should derive reform efforts. However, policy should be evidence-based and prudent, not imposed according to ideological whims. Bipartisan deliberation and input helps craft balanced solutions that serve all Americans. Sweeping unilateral action undermines stability. I mean, this is, they're saying essentially, yes, this is on the nose. I don't know if the medium's a good site or not, but this was so far, it all makes sense to me, to be fair. I'm taking their word for it. I haven't read all 902 fucking pages. Reform efforts should protect minorities, civil liberties, free speech, and the principles of ethical governance. Checks on executive power should be strengthened, not weakened. Policymaking should incorporate compassion and concern for vulnerable populations. Reform should empower people, not promote business interest. Prudence and restraint help avoid disastrous, unintended consequences. Radical reforms often fail or breed backlash. Oh my God. This article, I keep thinking I'm reading the last section of this article, and then there is more. Conclusion. This 920-page conservative treatise. I hate it when I have to read words I've only read in my head. Articulates a bold vision for reshaping the role of government in American life. However, its ideological rigidity, and lack of concern for ethical governance make many proposals dangerous and unwise if actually implemented. Effective policy reform requires acknowledging complex realities, engaging diverse perspectives, balancing competing interests, and upholding principles of ethical governance. Mandate for leadership, the conservative promise offers insights into conservative thought, but would badly damage America's civil service tradition, ethical standards, and just governance if directly translated into policy. Holy balls. Plan to dismantle U.S. climate policy. Oh God, let's check out their Twitter real quick.
Incredibly important reporting people need to pay attention to.
This plan that they want to put in place if the Republican Party wins the presidency upon the inauguration.
According to the New York Times, those plans include bringing independent agencies under direct presidential control.
It's kind of being pitched under the guise of dismantling the administrative state.
They say they would plan to do this with any Republican president.
It's about deregulation. It's about deconstructing the administrative state.
There's a network of conservative groups who are backing this effort, like the Heritage Foundation.
Take this very seriously. Don't think this is a joke.
It is incredibly alarming.
Frightening development.
You don't have to be a civics dork to know that you don't want that.
We've never seen anything like this in American history.
You know, we've really gotten to a low point in our society where it's so easy to fool stupid people. Like the very thought that you could take like they're not like Steven Crowder did this recently where you just take tons of quotes criticizing you and you lay music over it, and it's like we just wear every fucked up thing we're doing on our face. Statists are already panicking over our plan to demolish the administrative state. Fun fact, the word statist used to mean someone who wanted to consolidate power in the states and not the federal branch. It's not enough for conservatives to win elections. We are bringing the movement together. I don't care about any of this unless it tells me specific policies. The idea is to have civic infrastructure in place on day one to commandeer, reshape, and do away with the deep state. Recruiting still going on. Deep state wrecking ball coming. Okay, that is enough of that. So based on everything that I have taken in just now, I wish there had been a video. It would have been. I don't want to just read to you, so to speak. Although I do have this lovely voice, a voice meant for radio. And a face for it too. No. Yes. Self-burn. Oh. All right. Thank you for tuning in to Ruben Uncut. If you are listening on Spotify or your favorite podcast station, please consider checking out the YouTube. If you are watching or listening on YouTube, please consider checking out the Spotify. You can reach out to the show via my email, rubenuncut@gmail.com. If you would like to talk to me, I'd be more than happy to have you on my show for a conversation. But the important takeaway today is fascism. It's real, and it's coming for us. I am alarmed. And you should be too. Have a hopefully free and American whatever. As opposed to everything I just was learning about, which would be not America anymore.